Hi, there is an issue with some settlements. It's probably the most common thing that people seem to get into a disagreement over, either with the title company directly or with other people with regards to the pros and cons of it. And while it doesn't happen all the time, it happens frequently enough to be the one thing that tends to set off disagreements, and they're sometimes difficult to resolve because of misunderstanding by the people that are arguing about it. At any rate, that one thing that seems to cause certain amounts of disagreements when it comes to settlement, when it comes to buying a property, is title insurance. We're going to break down what title insurance is, who it protects, what the point of it is, whether you should buy it in the first place, or whether it's a big ripoff like some people assert. So let's talk about it. First, the thing to understand is that there is no database, one huge database that shows whom owns which properties in your local community or nationwide. There just is no way to just call up Google and say, who owns this property? Title searches, as they're called, when a transaction is being bought or sold, are made by checking into the transfers that occurred. And if a property's been around for a long time, there could be years and years and decades and even centuries of transfers. So the only way to determine who owns a particular property at any given time is to look up the transfers. And unfortunately, things can get missed. Now, in many areas, DMV included and Montgomery County, Maryland, many of the title records are kept electronically. So they're way more accurate now than they ever have been. Back in the day, you actually had to go to the courthouse, the land records office, the clerk of courts, and actually by hand look up the transfers of the particular property that's being bought or sold. And because it was a tedious manual sort of thing, things could get missed, things could get lost, things could get overlooked. And so today, you're not necessarily concerned too much with a recent missing item on a title search, but there could be things from years ago, and that could get you in a lot of trouble and could be very costly. Now, this all becomes very important when you understand what title insurance has to do with. And it covers you, the owner of the property, against ownership issues from the past. It doesn't protect you from anything going forward. Car insurance, homeowners insurance protects you for the future, any sort of loss or danger that might occur in the future. Title insurance protects you from things that have happened in the past. Why that matters is that years ago, something could have gotten missed in an earlier transfer or an earlier title search that could be sitting there and now suddenly shows up when you're trying to sell or buy this property that you're involved with. The types of issues that can be involved here can be liens, loans, mortgages that have not been released or were released and just the paperwork wasn't completed. Or there's some sort of lien from some taxing authority, or there's a judgment by someone who sued the owner of the property, or there could be a family member involved in an estate dispute. So any and all of these things could impact the ownership of a property from the past, and if they're not found, they could impact you when you're trying to make the sale, or could happen while you're trying to sell the property down the road. Now we're talking about title insurance. We realize that we're talking about two things when we're talking about title insurance. If you're buying a home with the use of a mortgage, the lender is going to require you to buy title insurance to protect the lender's interest in the property. So if they're guaranteeing or lending you $500,000 to make a purchase on a property, they don't want to lose that investment if somebody comes along and proves that they actually own the house when they've laid out X number of dollars for you to make that purchase. So there is lender's coverage, which protects the lender's interest in your property. That's mandatory if you're getting a loan. That's no option on it. You have to do it. The owner's title policy is totally optional. You do not have to purchase title insurance. There's no requirement, there's no law. It's often very highly recommended for lots of reasons and some of the things that I've just talked to you about, but it is not required. And this is where the dispute comes from. It's not needed, it's not required, and it costs a fair amount of money. And why should you have to pay for it if you're probably never going to use it? And the reality is that there are few claims made out on title issues these days. There's this concept of loss ratios in the insurance business. And the higher the loss ratio, the higher the chance that the insurance company is going to have to pay out a claim that would cost them money. And the lower it is, the safer the investment is. When we talk about loss ratios for homeowner insurance, it's at 56.5%, which means that 56.5% of the premiums collected on a homeowner's policy go towards paying out claims over time. Put that in perspective, car insurance can be 60 to 75%. So if you pay $1,000 for your car insurance, 670 to 750 bucks of that is going out the door to pay claims for some mishap, some accident, some problem with a car down the road. Like I said, homeowners is 56%, so a little over half. Title insurance is somewhere around 3 to 7%. So of every $100, $3 or $7 is actually spent on claims. So the reality here is that title insurance is actually a very profitable thing, which is why it gets so much attention. And when you consider that title insurance on a property can run anywhere from 0.3% to 1% of the sale price, that can add up. So on an $800,000 home, that could be anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000. Now, it's only paid at settlement. It's not a recurring expense. But the fact is, if you didn't have to pay it, why would you? Well, if you have a claim that ends up being taken care of by the title insurer, then it was well worth it. If you never had a claim, well, then you had it in your back pocket and spent that money and regretted it ever since. So the owner's policy is totally optional. It's 0.3 to 1%. So if you're talking about an $800,000 house, you're looking at somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000 at settlement. So based on the loss ratio, which is very low for title insurance, the chances of you ever having a claim against your title insurance are very low. So the premium that's paid is largely profit. And it's a profit to the title company, and it's a profit to the underwriter, the insurance carrier that is being paid. So at settlement, you're paying a few $1,000s, most of which is going directly to and split somehow, I don't know the ratios, but split between the title company and the insurance carrier itself. Okay, so if you factor in the fact that there is a very low chance of a claim being paid out and a rather significant policy premium being paid at settlement, and the fact that almost all transactions that occur in the United States have title insurance involved, even if it's only to protect the lender's interests, we're talking about a lot of money. And that's where the dispute comes in. So people think that that money is just wasted. And despite the total number of transactions that would occur, the total number of policies that were created on an annual basis, when you factor in also that the top four carriers do the bulk of the business, that's First American Title, Fidelity National, Old Republic, and Stewart Title, they are the ones that do most of the business. So these companies are making a lot of money uh, on a pretty much guaranteed basis annually. So, after all this is said, what's the benefit of title insurance? Well, it does protect you from some rather dangerous and potentially costly sorts of things. Things can get missed and often do on a title search. I was listening to a podcast on the subject the other day, and the vast majority of properties that transfer in this country have some sort of title issue. Some of them are not very serious, but many of them are. And without title insurance, one could be subjected to some rather costly handlings without even knowing it up front. So if you didn't have the title insurance, you'd be stuck potentially with a big bill to fight off whatever the issue was. Now, what are some of the issues? Well, one is forgery or fraud. Someone could be trying to take access to your property by using forged or fraudulent documents. It does happen. And if you have a title insurance policy, they have the ability to just determine whether that was in fact fraud, and they have the capabilities of fighting it and shutting it down. It's also not uncommon for unknown heirs to try to take possession of a property after the owner has deceased. This is not uncommon at all and happens pretty frequently. And unless you've got a title insurer to protect you against that, you could be up against a pretty expensive legal battle. Now, a title search does locate liens, but liens can be missed. There are tax liens, mechanics liens, which could be levied by a contractor. Let's say the house you're buying had some major work done to it prior to settlement. How do you know that the bill's been paid? You might see an invoice, but you might not be able to document whether it got paid. And if it didn't get paid, mechanics liens can be attached to the property, and they can go unnoticed during a title search because of the way those liens operate in the records. And of course, there is human error. Somebody could have filed something incorrectly, and so that it doesn't get found next time the title search is done. I had some folks buying a property some years ago, and we were a couple of days from settlement and found out that there was a lien for a previous mortgage going back about 20 years earlier that had never been fully removed. Now, the property had changed hands a couple of times. This got missed, and the lien, while it had ultimately been paid off, it did show up when they did the title search, and now we had an issue to take care of. Fortunately, it did get resolved. Fortunately, the property did change hands. But for a little bit, it was tense and scary because this was a rather large unpaid mortgage that appeared suddenly out of nowhere. Now, the upfront cost can be high. Like I said, anywhere from 0.3% to a percent. But it is one time. It's not like it's something like your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance, which is a recurring expense. It's one time. It protects against things from the past that you won't know that are there. So it is just one time. You pay it, you're done with it, never have to worry about it again. And it goes off in, if you hold the house for 20, 30, 40 years, it's always in place. Now, the downside here is that since payouts are rare, since it's not common at all for a claim to have to cost insurance carrier money, most of what you're paying goes right into their pockets and uh, largely is profit. So it's part of what funds the title insurance industry. It's part of what funds the title company that you're going to use. And unfortunately, because title insurance is such a profitable thing, the title company may not discuss it with you very clearly up front. It always shows up on the settlement statement, but I've had it happen on more than one occasion where it's never been brought up to the person who's buying the house, and they suddenly see this line item, which is quite significant, and it doesn't even get brought to their attention, and it's kind of assumed that people are just going to do it rather than going through the time to discuss it, which is another part of the problem here. The title companies often do not bring up the subject at all, because if they bring it up to you, you might say no. Now, it's not a thing I would advise you to do particularly, but you do have that right, and if they talk about it, it might be declined. And if they don't bring it up, the more likelihood is you're just going to sit at the settlement table and sign off because you already know how much money the closing is going to cost you. So it is stacked against you a little bit. And of course, there are exclusions like there are with any insurance policy. This certainly doesn't cover things like zoning or environmental issues. It doesn't cover things that were known prior to you making the purchase. So there are limitations, there are exclusions, and you have to be very careful about knowing that when you do engage in the process. All right, so title insurance, at least covering you as the owner of the house, is optional. It's rather expensive. It's a one-time payment for something you're probably never going to get a benefit from. However, if someone came knocking on your door saying that they were actually the owners of the house you just bought, what would you do? So, in many cases, that several $1,000s that you're going to pay comes in handy on the subject of what if, and that's what they're counting on. So, make your decision carefully. Use a reputable title company. Discuss title insurance with the title company. Get the pros, get the cons, find out what it protects you from, find out what it doesn't protect you from, and also discuss the different levels of coverage. There are more than one level. There's basic form and there's enhanced form, and they have different costs as well. So discuss all these things. Push the point because the title company is probably not going to bring it up to you. So you'll want to talk to them about it. It will be part of your transaction if you're getting a mortgage, at least in terms of protection for the lender, but on your own coverage, it will be there if you don't say no. I'm not telling you to say no. It's probably a stupid idea to say no on the off chance that something does kick it in and make it something you needed. However, it is your right to know, and that's what I advocate for you. At any rate, if you like this, click like. If you want, subscribe to my channel. I'd love to see more of you. And if you have any questions, send me a text and enjoy your new house.